how do you beat the system? How do you, in this period when it is so difficult to get published through a large house, how do you beat the system? Well, the number one way is through what I call reputation and digital fluidity. And what that means is you have to build a reputation, which means that it is possible to get published through these larger houses if you have a pretty serious reputation to back yourself up. How do you go about doing that? Well, the very easiest way to do that is to produce, is to literally step outside of that race, step outside of that need to try to submit only to a larger publisher, and start self-publishing, start hitting smaller publishing companies, independent publishers, spreading your material around, especially in terms of like short stories. Don't hit the big guys. I mean, maybe hit the big guys first, but if don't just hit the big guys. Hit smaller publications. I know that a lot of smaller magazines, especially those which are exclusively online, are hungry for stories, especially ones that don't pay. And while it may not be, a wonderful thing at first to submit to magazines that don't offer any compensation, the more stories that you get out there published and the more things you can tack onto your resume, the more attractive you will be to other publishers. I mean, you think about it this way. What kind of book are you more likely to buy? Well, maybe that's a bad example because we're a bunch of writers here, but which kind of book are you more likely to buy? One by an author that you know and trust, or one by an author that you've never heard of before? Okay, so it's about building reputation. It's about creating reputation by sort of saturating the market in any way you can. Think of it, in terms of the lottery metaphor before getting struck by lightning. If you're playing the lottery and you have one ticket, chances are you're not going to win. But if you write a whole lot of stories or a whole lot of poems, you polish them up, they're good, you put them out there where people can see them. That's like having a lot of lottery tickets. It's like going out of the store and buying 10 lottery tickets. You still might not win on your first try, but you've got a lot better chances. I had one article, case in point, I had one article that I put out there on some no-name service, contributor network, online, for free. It was just a throwaway article. It was called 101 Reasons to Stay Single. And literally, the week after I got engaged, a production company called me and told me they wanted to create a TV series out of it. Yeah, they sent me a check for $2,500 just for 6 months holding rights. Just to be able, not holding rights, exclusive television production rights or something like that. Basically the right to, for 6 months, be the only company that I could sell the article to, the rights to the article to. And at the end of the 6 months, I get the rights back. So, unless they decide to make it into a TV show, which then there's more money involved, which is good. So, and I didn't even do any advertising with that. Like I said, it was a throwaway article. I stuck it up online, and somebody ran across it. You never know when that's going to happen. It's a lottery ticket in a sense. So the more you get out there, the better. Let's see. I already talked briefly about small press versus big press. I have an instructor when I was working at my degree at Sacramento State. I had an instructor who had published 4 books and was starting to get in contact with people who were a little bit higher up the food chain. And the way he did that was he published through smaller independent publishers, places that you don't normally have a name for. I can't think of any off the top of my head. But if you look around online, if you look around and you look at books that are in used bookstores, you look at books that are in places where, not necessarily places that are oversaturated with the big boys, but places where you've got smaller publishers tend to end up. You'll find some of these names, and these places are publishing companies that will be around for 5 or 10 years, sometimes longer, and they never really reach that rock star level of success as, say, Org or Tor or a given larger publishing company. But they are a notch in your belt, and that's the important part. That's the reputation part. The more notches you have, the better. That's how he got Reba, by publishing through a number of different small publishing houses, talking to them, sending them a good manuscript, and getting rejected a lot of times because that's what happens. And having a fresh angle, which is one of the other things I'm going into here in a second. Advertising, if you're working online, a lot of people tend to fall into the ad AdSense trap, which is essentially that you go, oh, you know, I've got this website, I can put advertising on it and make money, and then I can turn around and turn that advertising money into money that I put towards having my article, or like my article or my stories up online, advertised online through search engines and whatnot. The problem with that is that it's run by a corporation that it wants to make money off the transaction, of course. You can't blame them for that. And so ultimately, you're going to, unless you're, you know, running a pretty serious site that's getting, you know, several thousand hits per day, like say one of my sites, Daily Love, you aren't going to see. You're basically going to have maybe one spot, you know, a couple hundred impressions, which is a couple hundred people looking at it, and that's all you're really going to be able to afford. And it's not going to be worth it because people, I mean, if people usually don't even look at those things. You know, advertising on the side. How often, if you go online, how often do you look at the advertising on the side that's, you know, unobtrusive, purposefully unobtrusive, buried in the side? Well, you know, if you want, you can look at the ads, but here's my main content. You know, it basically, it can be a situation where if you really get into it, it can cost you a lot of money and you can get almost nothing out of it. Different forms of advertising work better. I've done a number of different advertising campaigns offline, which seems to be the most powerful, which is really strange to me that, you know, you get more, you tend to get more of the stuff online, but people who want to go and look at it online, you tell them about it offline. It's strange, but one of the things I did is sometimes I'll dress up in the suit that I have that is completely covered in my own poetry, and I'll go into a tourist trap somewhere, and I'll start reading my poetry, and I start handing out flyers, and you wouldn't believe the number of people I get, you know, from websites just because of that, and it takes, you know, no time, really. I spent 45 minutes Saturday before last, and, you know, basically, so, and plus, I had my fiance running that camera while we did it, and I put those videos up online, and so people could see it, and even that, you know, each one of those is a lottery ticket in a sense. It brings people in. So, because if you link everything up, you tell them where the main hub website that they can access everything is. So, I talked briefly about self-starting. Self-starting is a good way to start. I've heard different things from different people about self-starting. I've heard success stories. I've heard failure stories. More success stories than failure stories. I've heard things like that Christopher Paolini got started by self-publishing. And he's the guy who did Paragon, which was a bestseller or something. And what's another one? I had another friend, I was talking to a marketing professional friend of mine who said that she had written 6 books, self-published them, and had brought them to some sort of a convention or an expo, and had tried talking to a number of agents, and they said, I'm sorry, you've got to have more like 10 or 12 books published before I'm going to even look at it. And so, you know, it really depends on who you talk to, I suppose, there. But I personally am a proponent of self-publishing. I believe, like I said, that is the future. And more and more what I see around me in terms of people who succeed through self-publishing seems to indicate that that's the way things are going, that direct artist-consumer relationship. It's a long way to go. Yeah, you can't, you know, I mean, most of the time, you can't really expect to throw one thing out there and expect to sell even one copy right off the bat. But if you put enough stuff out there and you take enough time, you spend enough time doing it, spend enough time carefully learning, you know, the tricks of the trade, relaxing into it, you know, in a sense, not investing too much of yourself. That's one of the things I've noticed a lot of people have trouble with. They tend to invest too much of themselves into the marketing process, and then they get frustrated, and then they get turned off, and then they stop working on it, and they forget about it altogether. That happens with rejections too. I mean, if you send off 30 short stories to magazines and they all get rejections, you know, how do you feel? Do you feel like you don't want to write anymore? You know? At least for a little while. And so that's going to happen if you self-publish initially. You know, you are probably going to sell 0 copies, or you'll sell a couple copies to your friends. a TV production company. You never know who's going to see that once it's out there. So, let's see what else we got. In terms of writing and attracting people, in terms of just like straight up, writing, originality of material. That's one of the most important things. You want to have material that does things that people haven't seen before. What's a good example? Classic example, going back to my professor at Sac State, he likes to employ a second-person narrative format for his books. I've never seen that before, and it blew my mind. And it was so engaging because you're literally living your life in his shoes. And not only does he give his life there for you to live, but he also creates alternate courses. Like he creates these pivotal moments in his life that you view, and then you reach them, and then he tells you what happened down one road, which is the road he took. And then he goes back later and says, well, what if I had made this decision? What if I had decided, instead of going back to school to get my degree and my teaching credential, what if I had decided to follow my passions of guitar? And what if I had moved to Rio, that kind of thing. And it's interesting. It's original, and I think that's what really does it. Good ideas versus tired ideas. Sometimes tired ideas sell. Look at the Twilight series. Now there's a tired idea. But it's sold. I think that, she's being backed by a major publishing company. So that right there is a pretty serious reputation. People will buy the names that they recognize. And how many people do you think went out there and after all the hype and hoopla decided, well, this book, I've heard it's horrible, but it's got a lot of attention. Maybe I should go buy a copy and see if it's any good. I mean, that right there's a sold copy. That's all based off reputation. Niche marketing, there's a good one. Look for appearing niches that haven't been filled, and fill them, in a sense. I know people that when the steampunk subgenre of fiction, which a lot of people probably haven't heard about, but I heard it got some news coverage the other day on TV or something like that. I don't watch TV, so. Before it became a more mainstream young person's movement, it was seen as a subgenre of science fiction, and it was a niche. There was next to no publications within it. There was stuff that people claimed was steampunk that wasn't originally written as steampunk, like stuff by H.G. Wells. People who were within steampunk grabbed onto that and said, "Oh, this is steampunk. Time machine, yeah." But there was no new stuff. There was nothing new, modern in there for quite a while. And then when people started realizing that there was a niche there, that quick. I mean, even Borders now has cardboard stands and big sections of the science fiction section where they've got books like Iron Angel and things like that are all have to do Clockwork this and Blimp that, or not Blimp, but Zeppelin that, Clockwork stuff, and it's interesting. So look for those niches. Look for something that hasn't been done. But that goes right back to the originality argument. So surprise your editors. If you're looking at the bottom level, if you're submitting to smaller magazines, larger magazines, so try to surprise your editors. Think of the editor as your audience, and write things that won't necessarily make them go, "What is going on? I don't like this story," and toss it out.